Hello and welcome to this episode of Focus On with me, Gyamkhatso Mosepele. The upcoming Namibia International Energy Conference promises an array of high-level discussions with industry leaders on the importance of diversity and inclusion in the energy sector. The conference will also empower delegates and other stakeholders to chart their own paths amidst the ever-evolving energy landscape. Joining me for more on this is Selma Shimutwikeni, CEO of RichAfrica Consultancy and convener of NIEC 2024. Selma, thank you so much for joining us and welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Now, my understanding of this event, it is going to its 6th year, which is almost a week away. Essentially, this is not new territory. What has been the past 5 events been like for you? And more importantly, looking ahead to the one coming up, what can attendees expect?
Yes. Yeah, we'll be having our 6th edition of the Namibia International Energy Conference on the 23rd to the 25th of April. And it's been a long journey since the inception of the conference in 2012. There's been many developments in the oil and gas industry in Namibia, as well as the renewable energy space. And it's just an exciting time for our country, and I believe for the region as well. In terms of in terms of the theme of the conference, it is Reimagine a Resource-Rich Namibia, turning possibilities into prosperity. So it's just asking all the stakeholders, including Namibian people as well as the investment community, to create a roadmap on what we can be with the recent oil and gas discovery finds in the country, as well as our contribution to the region as well.
Selma, it's interesting that you've touched on the theme, which speaks to Namibia's position as an energy hub. Now, moreover, on what people can expect from this event, what are some of the notable names or captains of industry that will be making their way to the conference?
Yes. So the conference is hosted by RichAfrica Consultancy, and the patron of the conference, the Ministry of Mines and Energy. As a result, the Minister, Toma Luendo, will be opening the conference, giving a keynote address. And we're also hosting it in strategic partnership with the African Energy Chamber. And we'll be hearing from Mr. Ng Ayuk, the Executive Chairman of the Chamber. This year, the demand is very high, and it's very exciting in terms of the speakers we're able to attract. Notably, we have the OPEC Secretary General will be giving the opening address. We have the senior vice presidents of Shell and Chevron, most of the international oil companies, as well as speakers from other parts of the world, such as Dr. Marcio Melo, a renowned oil and gas geoscientist, as well as from the continent, former head of local content, Mr. Simbi Wambote as well, will be attending the conference, amongst others.
Amongst others. So it's notably an event with a melting pot of different experts and captains of industry to give their insights. But more so with the content, it has been seen or positioned in a way 16 sessions over 2 days. It sounds like a jam-packed session. What are some of the takeaways that you particularly want those coming in, but as well as the speakers as they impart their knowledge onto each other?
In terms of, it is a jammed, quality program. The conference is a thought leadership platform. So it focuses on sharing, best practices, lessons learned for Namibia from other regions. But at the same time, I believe that the continent, most African countries are facing similar challenges in the energy space. So it's a melting pot of local and international experts to kind of help contribute to the conversation on how to make sure these resources are a blessing for Namibia. And because the investment community has put so much money in the industry, we believe that collaboration is at the heart of this conversation. And so in terms of takeaways, we're looking at actionable strategies on how to unlock value in the industry. We're looking at promoting collaboration and strategic partnerships to unlock value in the energy sector. Also looking at the entire value chain. So yes, we're talking about oil and gas and renewable energy and power generation. However, we need infrastructure to support those developments. We need certain services to support the industry, such as aviation, for example. So it's a great thought leadership platform that not only contributes to Namibia, but to the energy conversation, globally.
And I'd just like to touch on the recent positioning with the gas finds, the oil and gas deposits that have been discovered, and that economic potential for the country. One, you have spoken about balancing the two parallels, where this is a blessing and an opportunity for the growth of the country, but also balancing that with ensuring you protect the country's interests. Within your role and your expertise, how do you find that middle between those two opposites?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. It is definitely a balancing act. I think it is, from a government policy perspective, our country has a comprehensive energy policy that tries to address some of the challenges, attached to discoveries of oil. So one of the key questions is, for example, how do Namibians participate in the sector? So currently there's a draft local content policy which looks at how Namibians can participate, whether it's entrepreneurs or professionals in the industry, and being intentional but also very pragmatic as well. Namibia is a country that is very stable, great infrastructure, and from the 90s had a framework for oil and gas developments. And there's a great relationship between the private sector and the public sector, and I believe everybody wants the industry to work. We're in the era of the energy transition as well, so it's also a balancing act on, 40% do not have access to power. On the continental level, 600, million people have no access to energy. But at the same time, we are mindful of, environmental protection and ensuring that we have the right governance structures in place to make sure that it is a blessing.
And I like that you've touched on the sustainable front and the ESG concerns. What ways are you going about ensuring, as the country adapts to this newfound resource, how does it position itself to include some of these concerns or the future of sustainable energy?
Yeah. I mean, Namibia has always been, sustainability has always been something that's been on the continent. It's not a new concept. So if you look at from the environmental point of view, we're one of the few countries in the world where the environmental protection is in our constitution. And we have a very dynamic mining sector where we've been able to protect our environment in that respect. From a social point of view, the S in the ESG, which I believe is, I want to say, more important in the African context, there is, in terms of participation of women in the industry, in terms of companies contributing to the communities and education, that has already been kind of a precedent in terms of the mining sector and just in terms of the conversation in the country. So I believe the framework is there, and as well as from the governance point of view. I just think, obviously there's higher economic rent with the oil and gas discoveries and more complex dynamics, but we are aware of the potential challenges, and we are also aware of the strategies that can be adopted to kind of counter that.
And I'd also like to know what your definition of success would look like, one, for the outcomes of this upcoming event, but additionally from those takeaways that happen with the stakeholders and political heavyweights that are making way to the conference. What would success look like for you?
Success, I think it goes back to the reimagining, so how can we unlock the value of the recent developments? I believe Namibia is in a unique position to leverage the lessons learned in other regions. So many countries have made mistakes, and we're in a position to learn from the mistakes and avoid those mistakes. Collaboration, I think, is key to the success of the development of the industry. Collaboration between the public sector, private sector, as well as the business community as well, and inclusivity. I think it's very, so in terms of the conversation, it's very important that, people are at the heart of the conversation. Yes, we understand that people need to get the return on investments. We understand this infrastructure needs, must protect the environment. But how does it, improve the livelihoods of the Namibian people? I think that's very key. And also we have other ministers coming from other countries to also share their experiences. We're having Minister Bruno Itua from Congo Brazzaville, so they'll be sharing their experience. They are way more advanced in terms of the oil and gas sector, to share experiences. So also from a continental point of view, we are in a unique position to leverage what has happened elsewhere, but also I think in terms of reimagining is, can Namibia be the next Singapore? Is Namibia the next Qatar? What is Namibia's role in contributing to the energy sector in the region? We are having challenges in the energy sector across the continent. So what role can we play to actually also meet those needs? Yeah.
And I'd just like to touch on your role at helm of RichAfrica Consultancy. I understand it is a Namibian company that specializes in natural resources law and policy, as well as business facilitation and other related services. Just touching on your position as a woman in leadership, can you touch on the Future Energy Leaders Legacy Program and your participation in it?
Oh, yeah, no, definitely. Well, in terms of the RichAfrica and in my role, I was very fortunate a few years ago to be on the team that reviewed and drafted the national energy policy for Namibia. And I was the only woman on the team at the time. And, one thing I learned through my experience in curating this thought leadership platform over the past 12 years is that, if you're at the table, you must make room for others to join the table. If you're privileged enough to write policy, you have to think about the people who are not at that table and make space for them. So as a result, there's lots of women participating in the industry. We're very intentional, even in terms of our panel discussions, to have women thought leaders to contribute. And also, there's a strong interest from the youth to be a part of the sector. So they need to have awareness around what are the opportunities. So for example, in the oil and gas industry, the first oil, as they call it, is probably like 5 to 7 years away. So we have 5 to 7 years to prepare talent to participate in the space. And so as a result, we decided to launch the Future Energy Leaders Legacy Project, which is to get young people to be a part of the conference, to get mentorship. And many of the companies very passionate also about developing human capital. And so we understand it's a process. So we just want to get the young people in the conversation, taking into consideration that at the continental level, we have the fastest, the largest youth population. And energy being an enabler to develop our continent, it's very important that the youngsters are part of the conversation.
It is indeed important to lengthen the table and let others have a seat at the table. Thank you so much for your time and your insightful contributions ahead of the Namibia International Energy Conference. And that's how we wrap up this conversation with Selma Shimutwikeni, CEO of RichAfrica Consultancy and convener of NIEC 2024, on what viewers and other attendees can expect leading up to the upcoming Namibia International Energy Conference. From myself, and the team, it's goodbye for now.